Hello everyone, friends. So, we have accumulated your questions. You can leave your questions in our Telegram chat. I will receive all of them. We will discuss this together. So, can you discuss creating mutual understanding without sentimentality? Well, what can I say, friends? First of all, without any unnecessary lyricism, this really makes me happy right away. Yes, you see a lot of lyricism and fluff in my texts and speeches, even though I try to be extremely to the point. Yes, concise and focused. Mutual understanding is essentially, in essence, the expression of one person and the understanding of another, while the expression of the other and the understanding of the first will indeed be, in a way, the reverse process. Accordingly, if this process occurs, we can say that people have achieved mutual understanding. If we talk about people not understanding each other, we must first understand that there are certain personal ideas and ideologies. One person has one ideology, while another person has a different ideology. If there is a contentious area, for example, one person says, "These are my money," while the other says, "Sorry, these are my money," pointing to the same money. Here, in this situation, mutual understanding is highly unlikely to be achieved, friends, or agreement, because both parties have strong personal beliefs or opinions regarding a sum of money that they cannot divide. If we are talking about some actually abstract things, yes, that someone agrees with someone or someone disagrees with someone, that someone likes something or doesn't like it, everything is simple here. Well, if I need there to be mutual comprehension between me and someone, I usually don't try to convince a person of my correctness. If I see that a person is wrong, I try to carefully steer the conversation to say, "Yes, indeed, in fact, okay. But most likely we will actually do it my way. Yes, you are right. Yes, but we will do it as I said." If you can't do that in any way either, then it's probably a conflict. And most likely it will be some kind of misunderstanding or another. In general, the theme of agreement, the theme of some understanding or misunderstanding, often stems deeply from the internal acceptance or rejection of another person. In other words, you can respect a person, understand them, and deeply accept them within yourself, then you can reach an agreement in a certain area, because you have already come to that agreement internally. If there is no agreement, if there is no inner trust, respect, and acceptance of each other, then most likely, at some point in life, some contentious issues will come to light. And if people cannot, so to speak, look at things from a detached perspective, yes, from the outside, even though no matter how detached they try to be, everyone still sees through the lens of their own conceptual frameworks. First and foremost, of course, love is needed, of course, compassion is needed, and of course, internal mechanisms of acceptance and trust are necessary. When this is present, achieving mutual understanding is easier. But it is also easier to find yourself in a situation where your mutual understanding is perceived as a weakness, as a form of submissiveness. Accordingly, one can exert pressure on you and forcefully impose their own version of truth and reality on you in various ways, which is not actually the case in reality. So what can be said here? If both people respect each other, mutual respect, accept each other, truly accept, and agree with each other, genuinely agree, then yes, following the same conceptual frameworks and moving in the same direction facilitates the process to reach consensus. However, if what I mentioned is somehow unavailable, and especially if each person has their own conceptual frameworks, meaning that what one person says is good, the other says is bad, then, of course, naturally, conflict is inevitable. And inevitably, some kind of pushing and shoving among people will occur. It is very interesting how Valentine's sleep unfolds, what it ultimately transforms into when he is constantly working and interacting with himself, and what kind of work takes place before sleep. As far as I remember, Valentina mentioned that she spends several hours before bed doing constellations. I could be mistaken, but I am interested in what tools have been added on a permanent basis for use before sleep and during sleep. Thank you. You know, I actually don't really work with arrangements or anything like that very often. The point is that I work continuously throughout the day. Right now, it may seem like I'm communicating with you, but in reality, internal work is also taking place. I observe who is speaking. I observe where they are saying it. I observe what dominant themes arise within, who is trying to prompt, who is trying to argue, and who is trying to agree. That is, indeed, within the mind, any truly rational and sane mind, a certain internal work is taking place. It can be visible to you, and this already indicates that you have awakened, that there is a bit of consciousness that is turned on, which controls and observes what is happening inside your head. And there is a consciousness that has not awakened. It does not even notice the creation of new dominants, or when the switching between them occurs, or when any internal dialogue takes place. It simply exists and is taken for granted. Accordingly, any internal dialogue, or internal thought, any exclamation of the internal dominant is defined as I. And the question of why I thought one way and then, 2 hours later, thought the opposite doesn't even come up at all. I mean, both ways are perfectly fine. So what? Here, you see, the work that is happening, which occurs every second, allows us to address the incoming, let's say, discrepancies with reality directly, so to speak, in real time at the moment when they arrive. In other words, I don't put it off for later, thinking that I'll deal with it then. I address it immediately right away. Yes, when there's absolutely a need, I can engage in processes, whether it's with setups, working with chakras, or channels, or any other part of my energy. That is, yes, I work on myself. It doesn't have to be before bed. I can do it in the morning. In other words, the meaning is that if you do not put your energy in order and expect everything to, in some miraculous way, work out correctly, well, for me, this is already like, in a way, naturally. It goes without saying that if I don't review, if I don't thoroughly analyze, if I don't organize things, well, of course, no one will do it for me. In other words, if there is still a mess, the chance of something happening increases significantly. So, of course, I track every day what is happening with my energy. I kindly request a more detailed explanation of the mechanics of information processes on the left and right sides of the body, at what informational level it is possible to make choices of event sequences, how to set filters on the left, and how to effectively disengage from unwanted events that have already manifested. I would be very grateful. I wouldn't have taken situational series until the very end, yes, in such a context of development. And I would work, as I indeed recommend to you, as much as possible with the energy of the chakras, the energy of the central channel, the energy of the shoulder meridian, the energy of the edges and shells. Subsequently, when the structure is built to the point where no significant distortions are observed and no strong internal tensions are present, once it is established, the field is more or less in the process of adequate and reasonable interaction with the world. In other words, situational sequences arrange themselves in the best possible way because the energy within the field structure is organized. It reflects, among other things, future processes. And there's absolutely no need to adjust them in any way at all. But if you want to take the opposite approach and start making choices on different events from the left side, we explain all of this very well in this second course. If you have taken it, if you have worked with the techniques and methods that I provide there, it clearly and in a very specific manner shows in great detail where the checkpoints are, how to reach them in a step-by-step process, how to get from them to the next checkpoint, what can thoroughly influence or hinder you, and what can help. This course is very well presented in a comprehensive and effective manner. If we are talking about wanting to focus on the left and right sides of the body, then yes, there are indeed many areas on the left side where energy gets stuck. You could call it a zone of reduction, a zone of some kind of exit from the metaspace where the fluid starts to slow down significantly, and from there, heaviness begins to form. Well, again, my advice to you, friends, is to use one specific system, because if you take everything at once, you end up with a hodgepodge. Yes, if you want to analyze this through fluids and fluidic formulas, you should work specifically with what is called time moving from left to right. Let's look at the left side. What does it mean? We'll remove everything unnecessary. Where? Into the well. It's a rough approach. It's an approach, but a rough one. On the other hand, you can quietly sit down and use your consciousness to illuminate the same things that do not align on your left side. Expand your awareness and look from larger volumes to smaller ones. Accordingly, it will be clearer what is happening in the fields closest to the body. To deal with consciousness, to bring order and harmony there. If you have already gotten caught up in negative things, then I tell you that the best method of getting away from anywhere, this is ignoring. That is, you are not engaging. You are neither for nor against. You are not reacting at all. If you have this experience, if you understand how it is, people are trying to reach out to you, and yet you kind of ignore it, as if nothing is happening. If this has stopped, if your ignoring helped, well, that's wonderful. If this hasn't somehow stopped, then it means we need to find some instrument that can relieve this tension. Any negative situational series is indeed a psycho-emotional blockage for the body, because it is exactly the same troubling emotion that concerns you. This is exactly the same troubling muscle structure that causes them to spasm, which makes one carry the emotional background of this tension inside. What difference does it make whether it's a situational series or, so to speak, the frozen light of your grievances, or something else, right? In other words, it's what prevents you from living. If you are taking my training sessions, if you have taken my courses, you know how to work through psycho-emotional blockages. Please let go, and everything will be fine. This is not the first time you have mentioned that you will reach out to the scientific community. I'm curious, how do you plan to do that? And will your method be authoritative for this community? Perhaps. The question is not trivial. The scientific community is a very conservative system, and it is extremely difficult to gain or earn authority within it. You are not naive, that is a fact. I am very much looking forward to your book. The question of any scientific discovery, or simply any scientific work, fundamentally lies in adhering to certain established rules and frameworks that are essential for accurately presenting information in a coherent manner. That is, in essence, there is a particularly specific form of report regarding what a person has found or is trying to discuss. That is, if a certain theory inherently conforms into this form of report and is presented with a description of some practical part, then, in principle, it is a scientific work. Well, whether they recognized him or not is already a secondary question, right? The point is whether he exists or not. If it exists. If it has been submitted. If someone is there to say it's nonsense or not, it needs to be read. In other words, in order to form an opinion. Write some detailed criticism or even provide a comprehensive review or evaluation about a work. You need to read it thoroughly and carefully. There are certain things that I call knowledge, which, in my view, do not require any special proof. The very essence of the consciousness itself touching the knowledge leads to a profound recognition within ourselves. This truth starts to cycle every second. But again, our focus will not be on that, but rather on logical schemes. On what? On algorithmic schemes, on what will be interesting for the scientific community because of the work of our consciousness, yes, in the context of modern psychology, in the context of the current understanding of how this works. Let's put it this way, there are significant discrepancies between what I have found and what philosophers and psychologists of the past, including Freud, Jung, and Kant, people we currently rely on, have proposed. To clarify, these discrepancies are not minor, they are substantial and noteworthy. Freud, for instance, had theories that delved into the unconscious mind. Jung explored the collective unconscious and archetypes. Kant focused on the nature of human experience and knowledge. The psychology and principles of working with the human psyche, which are currently employed by almost all practicing doctors and mental health professionals, reveal a certain number of omissions. Yes, and I believe, obvious omissions. These omissions are not just minor oversights, but significant gaps in understanding and application. That is, we do not accept that a person is, so to speak, a receiver, a kind of adjunct mechanism between informational messages, signals, and stimuli. Instead, we view a person as a creator, a subject who also perceives, interprets, and thinks for themselves, independently and autonomously, making decisions based on their own understanding and insights. In my opinion, all these incoming thoughts, feelings, and emotions, all these internal thoughts, feelings, and sensations are mostly external processes, and the mind is certainly and truly some kind of reception machine that processes global informational processes and perceptions and interpretations. Some of the information, for instance, makes its way to consciousness, but this is often no more than 3 to 5. In fact, 5 to 7% of everything that passes through a person. I am not rushing anyone to expand their consciousness or anything else. I am saying that the input channels for information, like those inside any computer, must absolutely be closely monitored by specific antivirus programs, including anti-Trojan ones, and other potential threats. Software applications designed to prevent the emergence of negative channels, as well as the occurrence of spyware, Trojan programs, and other unwanted software within the system. Because if they exist, which is the case for 90 to 95% of people, it turns out that a person does not believe in themselves, does not belong to themselves, is caught up in some kind of rush, and is entangled in complicated stories with themselves. Due to these distortions, not only is the psyche burdened, but ultimately the physical body suffers as well, and health deteriorates. And I see that the parallel between health, between the mind, and between all the internal emotional chemical processes is so clearly and distinctly obvious that it is simply impossible not to draw this analogy. And it cannot be said that we can effectively resolve the issues at hand simply through dialogue, or that if a person complains about being hurt or feeling bad, the problem is solved in any way. Or we asked a question, and he directed his attention inward carefully and thoughtfully based on your question, and as a result, the problem was resolved. They are not resolved in this way, and there is only one method by which they are actually resolved, and it is this method that I am ready to illuminate for of the scientific community, so that they have the opportunity to observe this a little and take it into account, and whether they acknowledge it or not does not matter at this time. A topic of intuitively correct choices of paths, situational sequences, and immediate knowledge is interesting. Well, this is not about the topic, it's a program. This is a program that I compiled, synthesized carefully against the backdrop of his discoveries, against the backdrop of his vision of these processes. And at the moment, I am currently experimenting with it in medallions. We have several subjects. There are a few people who have these medallions, and I am observing how their fate changes, what is happening in their lives. There is a certain purity. Yes, the price is high, but it is also extremely valuable, integrating into the field structure and already operating constantly in some mode. If a person knows how to and wants to disperse it, strengthen it, and work in this way, effectively, it will work for them. So, let's put it this way, luck, right. Simply put, if it's luck. The topic is interesting. Well, what can we say here? Friends, it is an observation of oneself, an observation of internal processes and the mechanisms of my inner world. The things that I track, and I believe are a priority, are very interesting to me primarily for growth and development. And for other people, I immediately understand that this can be interesting for a certain fee. I synthesize these things into a certain vibration, into a certain flow, and I give it a password. And here you go. This is a very interesting working flow. I am also interested in the topic of making the right choice of path after a certain job. The walls that were limiting me have fallen. I don't understand where to go. All the doors are open, but it's unclear where to head. Well, don't hurry to go anywhere at this moment. Even if all the doors are open, keep building your potential right now. And because of that, what you need will be drawn to you from those doors. It would be interesting to hear recommendations for those who are stuck in the city on how to avoid losing energy, especially in the most foolish ways and without even realizing it. Points are obvious. Don't spend time on social media, control your emotions, and in communication. But here is a comprehensive list with clarification on where the greatest losses may occur. Thank you. Yes, indeed, the energy in the city is different. Yes, it's another. Let's say it's an informational background. But that doesn't mean it's bad, or it doesn't mean it's worse. Yes, it can be less high frequency, or perhaps it can be some other thing. Yes, perhaps in terms of color, in terms of design, and so forth. There is more glass vibrating, more concrete, more of those resins and gases and materials, which means potentially poisonous. Friends, I will say this, to each their own, and yet there are people who feel comfortable, convenient, good, and pleasant in the city. Because they are in the city, they feel alive. They feel a sense of community with a large number of people. They truly enjoy it. It absolutely gives them vitality. It allows them to move forward, a desire to live, create, and express themselves, and there are no problems. There are absolutely no difficulties in this. There are truly no serious horrors in this. None of this genuinely exists. These people find it convenient this way. Indeed, they feel good this way, and they do it like this. What, as they say, are the questions? If it's more convenient for you to live in the village, I live in the village. Maybe it's more convenient for you to live somewhere else. By the lake, by the sea. What else is important to you in a career? Maybe you prefer the mountains. Under 2000 km, that means a person can't live well. Friends, anything can happen. You choose for yourself. Yes, look at your life, your disposition, your inner needs, and what exactly you need. Well, just do it the way you need to. I believe that you can live in the city. There's nothing particularly scary about it. People, of course, have a harder time in the city because there are more people, more thoughts, and the psyche is more strained. But some people are used to it, and for them, it's normal, and that's all there is to it, and everything is fine. How to avoid and what to avoid? Well, you know, there's nothing you need to try to avoid there. It's just a different life. It's just a different mindset. And if you want to avoid something, what's the point of living in the city? You shouldn't avoid anything. You just move somewhere else. That's all. If you don't want to move anywhere, don't try to avoid anything. Live the city life. Feel the rhythm of the city. I generally like cities. It's just that right now, I've ended up living here. That's it. But I'm not against anything. Friends, I'm for everything, as long as it helps. Come to the Maldives with us. Come to the Istanbul retreat. I look forward to seeing everyone in my courses and classes. Goodbye, everyone.